We are Rogue Media Sports.
And it is time for the Doomsday podcast. Matt Mosley alongside Ed Warder from Frito Nation Productions. We come to you just a couple of hours as we tape this after the Cowboys 27-7. Just an embarrassing loss.
It's an emergency Chaz Green podcast.
Yes. To the Atlanta Falcons. And, boy, I was already new, Ed, before we really just dive deep into what was one of the most disastrous performances in Cowboys history, if not the most disastrous.
Maybe the worst individual performance.
That's what I was getting at, yeah, mainly by an individual. You know, Phil Pozderac, you weren't on the beat yet. That was before your time. There was a Giants game that I remember, and we'll never forget that. Some holding penalties that wiped out a possible Cowboys win in the Meadowlands in December. I remember sitting there as a kid thinking about that one. This, Ed, was horrific. But I will say this. First of all, have you had a chance this year? I'm trying to remember. You've done a couple of these Westwood One things. You have not been to the new Atlanta Stadium, the Mercedes-Benz or whatever they're calling that. You haven't had a chance to see it yet?
I have not. But
what is the significance of the train whistle or the huge train noise?
I think that's the sound, perhaps, of a pass rusher blowing past Chaz Green. That's what I think it might be. It could be Adrian Claiborne just whooshing past, and that's the sound it makes.
Yeah. I tell you, I was not. I remember Claiborne. I remember the young man when he was taken by Tampa Bay in the first round. I think it was back in 2011. My time, how time flies. And here he is at age 29, he basically had like half of his career sacks today.
His career high is 7.5, and he had 6 today against the Cowboys, 5 against Chaz Green.
You're saying his career high for a season.
For a season.
Yeah.
And he's had 74 career games in the NFL. He's had one multi-sack game. One game in 74 where he had 2 sacks even. And against the Cowboys, he gets 6 and gets the ball loose twice.
Yeah, it was a horrible display, and it was also maybe a case of coaching malpractice. We're going to get to it. Frito, play the music, please. And it is time to get deep inside this Cowboys loss in the Doomsday podcast. And Ed, so much promise as the Cowboys were able to run off 3 straight wins to get to 5-3, feeling good about things. And we thought this would be more about, can they do it without Zeke Elliott? And I want to say I did, and I hope you saw this on Twitter. I had made the case during the week that I thought the loss of Tyron Smith could be worse than the loss of Zeke Elliott. And at least for one game, I think I might have been on to something. Maybe Tyron Smith is one of the most valuable players in the league, or maybe Chaz Green is just horribly overmatched. But, Ed, one of the worst things we've ever witnessed from as far as an individual performance by the Cowboys.
Well, this was the first game of Zeke Elliott's 6-game suspension, and it was the first time that Dak Prescott was playing a game as a Cowboys quarterback without Elliott, and as it turned out, also without his left tackle, Tyron Smith. And I think the performance of Chaz Green at left tackle was so horrific that it rendered the entire offense completely dysfunctional to the point that we still don't have any idea what they look like when they don't have Zeke Elliott, because that wasn't the overriding factor, unbelievably, in this game. I mean, talking to people, in Atlanta as they got back on the buses and left the locker room, they were not terribly shocked that Chaz Green failed. And by that, they'll tell you that he's not like the rest of the players on the offensive line as far as the mentality that he brings to the game. We know he's had an injury history, and perhaps we shouldn't be shocked that he failed matched up against the Falcons' second-best pass rusher, right? Adrian Claiborne's not even their best guy. Vic Beasley's their best guy. He didn't even have to go against him. But if you keep in mind that he was trying to win the left guard job and failed against Jonathan Cooper. So he fails to win the left guard job against a guy who, he's been okay, maybe better than average, not a superstar. And then you're going to put him out at left tackle. And oh, by the way, no matter what happens, Jason Garrett, former quarterback, maybe values having protection on the blind side. No matter what happens in the game, you're not going to make an adjustment and give the guy help early enough when the game's still in question. It was a terrible performance across the board in that regard. And they're lucky, quite honestly. The only good news in this is Dak Prescott, for all we know, is still healthy enough to play next week.
Yeah, we think that is the case. And their best weapon, by the way, Ed, in that first half was Dak Prescott on the run. They certainly didn't have any other part of the running game going. And then did you like the play where I thought it was kind of a fun-looking play in the first half where he was sort of coasting for a first down, and then it became pretty obvious that he was just tired.
Exhausted. He was a one-man team in the first half.
He just didn't have his wind.
That's why he fumbled the ball. Claiborne took the ball away from him right before the half, and it was even worse than Von Miller taking it away from Cam Newton in the Super Bowl. You don't just take the ball away from a quarterback like he did in that situation. But I mean,
give me your lunch money.
Let's talk about the magnitude of this performance, because we said Chaz Green might have had the worst individual performance in the history of the Cowboys organization.
And yet, this coach, and I think as you teased this tonight, you said something about a competency hearing for Jason Garrett, another person you're ensuring never comes on our podcast. But Jason Garrett comes out at halftime. So Erin Andrews, you know her work, Ed. She's a friend of yours. She's doing some halftime work there for Fox, and she comes back and she's talked to the coaches, and she's going to tell Troy and Joe what she found out. And she said, Jason Garrett told me that the crowd noise is affecting these guys. I mean, okay, I'll say this.
No kidding.
The train whistle was pretty loud. I don't think that crowd was that loud. So they apparently were not prepared for crowd noise. That got them. And honestly, that home crowd that the Chiefs had at the Cowboys, that should have prepared them. And so it was embarrassing.
What you said
on a lot of levels.
And I didn't agree with this. I still think Elliott is the most important guy to this football team, as I've said on both sides of the ball. But yeah, in this game, I think going from Zeke Elliott to Alfred Morris, although they quickly went to Smith because of their pass protection issues, but going from Zeke Elliott at running back to Alfred Morris as your starter is not as big a drop-off as going from Tyron Smith to Chaz Green. Now, so I had somebody with the organization tell me this morning before the game that was their biggest worry, and they were worried about Dak Prescott getting hurt in this game. They were worried about how good the front in Atlanta is. They're worried about the crowd noise. They're worried about getting behind in the game, and all of those things materialized.
But again, why didn't they? I mean, you are allowed. I mean, Aikman from the start kept saying, well, I think they're going to help him. They need to do more to help him.
Aikman's vote got Jason Garrett the head coaching job in Dallas as much as anything. I mean, he's a big pro Jason Garrett guy. Garrett was his backup quarterback, a guy he really cared about, really advocated for him to get the head coaching job, took him down to meet Jimmy Johnson or talk to Jimmy about how to be a head coach before he actually began that process. And yet he's right away saying, hey, they got to get this guy some help. And so, yeah, I think the first couple of sacks are on Chaz Green. I think the rest of them are on Jason Garrett as much as they're on Chaz Green. But the magnitude.
And Linehan, let's throw him in there. I mean, he is capable of, in Miles Austin, did you see him? Miles is holding up signs, 11.
That's how many guys they want to make sure they have on the field. Because it looked like they had about 6.
That's right. Guys, let's put 11 on the field. But he's holding up. Here's this thing for the personnel. You can put schemes together. You can even go 2 tight ends. Ed, I've seen them do that before. You can ship a defensive end with a running back. You are allowed to do that. Alfred Morris and McFadden know how to do that. I even think Rod Smith.
Well, I think the reason that Rod Smith got into the game so early, I think their pass protection was so bad that they couldn't play the running back that they wanted to play as their runner because Alfred Morris isn't good at blitz pickup. And so they thought they'd play Smith as their third down guy who's better at blocking, who's better at receiving the football. And so that one position and what they allowed to happen kind of unraveled the entire offense. And to think that only Derek Thomas has ever had more sacks in a single game than Adrian Claiborne had in this game, I mean, no single Cowboy opponent has ever had 5 sacks in a game before. And the Cowboys used to play twice a year against Lawrence Taylor and twice a year against Reggie White. And yet this guy has a better performance than either one of those guys against the Cowboys?
Yeah. But again, it was happening right away. It's not like it's not like they should have been shocked, and so you're right. They were worried. Okay, we're worried about this. Oh my gosh, this is happening. This is happening. Oh, he's got 3 sacks at halftime. That's the big story. I mean, obviously, it's the huge story of the game. It was the story of the first half too. Ed, what was the score at halftime? They were it's 10-7. They're right there in this game, even with everything going against them because of that turnover they got, the takeaway that Xavier Woods got. And then they were able to march it in.
On the very first series.
And the Falcons did not realize, apparently, that that Dak likes to run. That was an amazing play when they both ran out there. Who was it they both tried to go get?
Were they chasing the running back?
Was that Alfred? Well, whatever. They were running it, and They both went to Rod Smith, and Dak had it, he went in for the touchdown.
But you're right. It was immediately that this was a noticeable problem because on the first series of downs, Claiborne got a sack, got a pressure, got a hit on Dak that forced an interception that was nullified because Beasley on the other side jumped offside. So it was an issue from the first series of downs, and it was a problem that they didn't even attempt to correct until 8 minutes were left in the game when they finally took Chaz Green out. And this is the most sacks in a game by an individual since O.C. Umenyiora had 6. And I think you remember we were talking about that game.
Well, I think O.C. actually ended up with 7 individual sacks in that game, but he had 6 on Winston Justice.
Winston Justice, the left tackle of the Philadelphia Eagles. And talking to somebody who plays that position, a pretty noteworthy tackle himself, tells me that, hey, that Winston was ruined in that game mentally and emotionally, that he didn't want to play left tackle ever again. Now, I don't know if the Cowboys, we don't know if Tyron Smith is a 1-week injury and he's going to be back this week against Philadelphia or not, but I think it's somewhat ominous that when I asked that question at the end of the game today, people there were saying, well, I don't know how close he is. He didn't travel, which is noteworthy. And this person said, it's going to get worse next week against the Eagles.
Yeah, if you're right. And, although Shirley, they don't have anybody.
Who's Shirley? Are they going to start her?
Okay, thanks. It's like Naked Gun or something. I don't think they're. The Cowboys have to make some adjustments. They can't put this guy out there again. And I'm serious. You said something about Winston Justice, and I'm only halfway joking here. Like to go through what that kid went through, what Chaz Green went through, the former Florida player, former third round pick. Like you almost need to go into therapy after that game. I mean, you can get ruined mentally, and they let it happen. I mean, that's the thing. That's where the coaching malpractice comes out in my mind. They sat there and watched it happen and just really didn't do anything about it. Now, Troy had a good point. Late in the game, poor Byron Bell is shoving his man, shoving Claiborne outside for once. And at that point, I think Dak was just shell-shocked and didn't really step up in the pocket. And, that's a feeding frenzy at that point in the game. But when the game was still there, it was 17-7, and you got Nugent down there clanking. They should have seen that coming because he'd been knocking in extra points off the upright. So he misses one that would have made it 17-10. This is a mess. And here's the thing. You talk about a house of cards, Ed. This is a team that is always seemingly one player away from falling apart. We talked about it. This is a team that everything just completely fell apart for the defense when Sean Lee went out. Well, it happened again. In one game, you saw it. They finally started running the ball. The Falcons did. And poor Jalen Smith.
They lost their leading rusher, too, in the game. Devontae Freeman
goes out early. And in fact, Aikman or somebody says something to the point of, well, I don't know if Atlanta will be able to do anything because they've lost their best back, Devontae Freeman. Elliott comes in, did a superb job, and part of that is our man Jalen. Oh, God, love him, and I love his story, and I love that he likes to come on Doomsday. But, Ed, have you ever seen a man? I would ISO it and rewind it and try to watch all this happen. This is a man who sort of tries to diagnose a play and then run to the wrong side. Like, I'm watching this all play out. I'm watching where the hole's going, where the runner's going, and he's he's going to a different part of the line. Like it's all happening in front of him and then around the goal line. He's just diving at stuff. I mean, literally, it's just like
he's hoping to hit something.
Yeah, maybe if I just dive across the line of scrimmage, something will happen. I mean, Hitchens is good. Hitchens is a good player, and I got the sense that it was just like, man, I am out here by myself right now without Sean Lee. So to me, this team is sort of built. You talk about a team, we say, can they win without Zeke Elliott? Well, they can't win without Tyron Smith. I don't think they can win without Sean Lee. I mean, this almost, to me, feels like a team that apparently was almost constructed around three players. Wow. And two of them, well, all three of them at some point were out today.
I think you can say that the Cowboys are arguably missing their most indispensable player on offense, defense, and special teams. Whether the offensive player is Elliott or Tyron Smith, the defensive player is clearly Sean Lee based on the results of this year. They've lost all three games that he either didn't play in or didn't finish, right? And then they're without their kicker, Dan Bailey. So they've been hurt in all three phases by the absence of probably their most productive player. At the same time, football is a game of attrition, and you know that's going to happen. And it's the job of the football people. We've given Will McClay a lot of credit for building a strong roster, and Stephen Jones for being more influential. But it appears they still don't have enough significant depth at several positions, and that is getting them beat right now.
Well, I tell you, Ed, one of the only saving graces for me right now is that when my stubble gets out of control,
you are smooth.
I can pick up Harry's razors. Thank you so much, Harry's. And I tell you, that comfortable glide, the closest of the shave of a man with very, very sensitive skin. I'm just a sensitive man altogether, and these blades do an unbelievable job for me. Harry's is so confident you're going to love their blades. They'll give you the free trial shave set when you sign up at harrys.com/doomsday. Just pay for shipping. Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price, in which why, Ed, over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's. One of the reasons Harry's keeps coming back to the Doomsday podcast because our people, Ed, have been ordering these things, and they're loving them. Again, claim your free trial offer from Harry's today. $13 value for free when you sign up. Just cover shipping. Your free trial set includes this, Ed. A weighted ergonomic razor handle, 5 precision-engineered blades with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, a rich lathering shave gel. And, Ed, here's the deal. Sometimes when you get these free things, some of the ancillary stuff, some of the complimentary pieces are kind of like, I like the real deal, but some of this other stuff I'm not so sure about. The gel works beautifully. I'm telling you.
I wouldn't know.
Ed, I'm going to share with you. This is going to happen. And for those of you looking to get your holiday shopping done early, Harry's just released their special edition holiday sets that make great gifts. I'm going to do this for you and Frito. Check them out to get your free trial or to browse holiday gifts. Go to harrys.com/doomsday. Spell Doomsday, Ed.
Doomsday. And that's what it was for Chaz Green.
That's right. That's harrys.com.
I can't think of what I'm going to get you.
/Doomsday. All right, Ed, as we continue to walk through what was just a horrific day for the Cowboys and Chaz Green, also there's some interesting stuff brewing with Jerry Jones, always is. Did you like the shots they had today, Ed, of they'd go up and they'd show Arthur Blank, and then they would show Jerry, and then one time they showed him before the game, and they circled Arthur and then circled Jerry over there. And they were about 20 or 30 yards away from each other. Ed, do you think they even made eye contact with each other?
Well, we should explain why this is, right? That Arthur Blank
have such a sophisticated audience.
Took the lead position on this 6-member committee that's negotiating a contract extension for NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Blank, because he feared Jerry not being on the committee, but having a strong opinion on this, might inflict some damage and cause be a disruptive force. Kind of invited him in as a 7th member of the committee, but now Jones has informed them that he's threatening to sue. He has attorney. He's ready to sue, file paperwork. He wants to be able to extend some control for all owners over the commissioner's salary and the new deal. He wants to limit the commissioner's power to discipline. And obviously a lot of people think the timing is very interesting in that his position seemed to change when Zeke Elliott got suspended.
But I appreciate that explanation, and I know our listeners too, our loyal audience out there do as well. But I like this development that was mentioned by a guy who listens to our podcast a lot. In fact, they use a lot of our stuff, and we, with our permission, I might add, at Pro Football Talk. Ed, can you explain what some of the powers that be, as reported by Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk, just this very evening, what they are attempting to do to Jerry Jones? Because I like this. I think the owners have the ability to do this. Now, this is something more for just talk, because there's no way in the world they would ever do this. But I think Cowboys fans will sort of get a kick out of what the owners are at least exploring, what they could do to Jerry Jones based on, did you hear Joe Buck today? I like that. He said something about David Boies. He's like, one of America's great attorneys. He's also, Joe, one of the most despicable attorneys right now. I mean, he's the one out there that was Harvey Weinstein's guy. I mean, helping put that army of spies together to spy on all these women that have
and the reporters
accusers.
Who were
and the reporters, mainly the reporters from the New York Times and the New Yorker and other places. Ed, what is the latest on this?
So Mike Florio says that a league source with knowledge of the situation has told him that multiple owners have been discussing the possibility of invoking. I'm not going to get into what the number of it is, but one of the Constitution and bylaws authorizes the commissioner to determine that an owner has, quote, been or is guilty of conduct detrimental to the welfare of the National Football League, and that they could force such a person to forfeit their franchise. Now, can you imagine these guys trying to take Jerry's $4 billion football team away from him?
Yeah, no, I think what would happen is it would be like...
It might only be worth like $3.8 million.
It would, billion, yeah. It'd be like, they try to do something with the Clippers. There'd be like a forced sell type thing. So, I mean, Jerry, in a sense, would be made whole, but they would just run him off. Now, I'm not trying to compare him. By the way, let me just clarify before you jump in here. I'm not saying Jerry's done anything like Donald Sterling of the Clippers.
I wish I could have stopped you there, but go ahead.
Well, no, I'm saying, because I brought up the Clippers, but I'm just saying, interesting that that tells you right now how at odds these people are. And Ed, all this happens in the backdrop of another story that our friends Chris Mortensen and Adam Schefter had today, basically saying that Roger Goodell is his counter proposal on this extension, the one that Jerry is fighting tooth and nail. Ed, he wanted a private jet for the rest of his life and
what's wrong with that?
Health care for the rest of his life. I know, a lot of us do. He wants $50 million per year, and he wants use of a private jet for the rest of his life and health care for his family for the rest of his life.
Who in this whole equation would be trying to make Roger Goodell look greedy? If Jerry Jones is the only guy out there who objects to the extent that Jerry does, that he's threatening a lawsuit to prevent this from happening, who would benefit the most from this coming out on game day?
I wonder, Ed.
And I was also thinking, right, some owner is telling Mike Florio, hey, we can take Jerry's franchise away. Like, Mike Florio's not, I know he's got a legal background and everything like that, but he's not just perusing the NFL Constitution to see if Jerry Jones's football team could be taken away from him and sold at, a Highland Park garage sale this weekend. But so this is all very interesting, these machinations, each trying to expose the other and win the public relations game right now.
Yeah, it's happening, and a lot of leaks out there. And it's a good time to be a sports journalist. I mean, unless you want to make money or have a career. But, I mean, I'm just saying there's some interesting stories. The stories never go away. But now the problem for the NFL, Ed, there might be a fun time for a journalist in some sense or an interesting time. But for the league all this sort of overshadows the game. By the way, tonight, I haven't looked up to see what it was, but you got a blowout game on a Sunday night game, which is a big featured game of the week. You had the game of the week, or whatever they call it, America's Game of the Week on Fox today, blowout 27-7. The only interesting thing about it was a poor left tackle just getting exposed. The league has an issue right now, and I don't know how much often you listen to the You Are Looking Live podcast that Brent Musburger is a part of, but one thing that tells you what's happening to the league's product is there are people now saying in Vegas Saturday's bets are amounting to more money than Sundays. And that's another example.
More money on college football than the NFL.
Yeah, and part of that, the belief is it's just a more compelling product right now. Now, I know you having a major career for the most part, and you've covered college in the past, but in the NFL, it's hard to admit, well, there might be a better product, but they've got a lot of issues. And one of the biggest issues is every story right now, it's more about Jerry, it's more about protest, it's more about Goodell.
It's about suspensions, it's about illegal hits. Yeah, it's not about what's happening on the field on Sundays anymore. And that's unfortunate. And here we are more than halfway through the season, and there's no end in sight of these stories, right? I think the anthem protest thing, they seem at least temporarily to have some control over that. I think 49ers were the only ones who protested today. But, of course, the NFLPA, the Players Union, had to send out a memorandum that, hey, we deserve praise because we've talked to our players, and because it's Veterans Day, we are all going to honor the flag. How magnanimous of them is that?
Wait, but you're saying the 49ers, not all
Eric
of them
Reed,
did?
Who was one of the he's been very close to Colin Kaepernick since the time this all began. He continues to kneel.
But now that's what's interesting to me is I do believe what Jerry and this Goodell fight and all the Zeke stuff has really put the protest on the back page a little bit. It's gone away to a certain extent, and mainly because, Ed, you had a game today between like a 1-8 team and a 0-9 team. The one you're talking about where there was a couple of protests. So, nobody wants to watch that. I called up the guy to do another podcast with, Justin Tuck. What do you think, Justin? He's like, I'm in Bermuda.
Is Zeke there?
I don't know where. And that's another thing. I'm glad you brought it up, Ed. There was a report from Ian Rappaport that basically said Zeke, to kind of clear his mind and work out and be away from everything, he is going to leave the country. And I don't know, Ed. I don't know if this is a...
I can't think the Cowboys are looking fondly at the next 6 weeks where they have little or no interaction or control over a player who has not proven worthy of their trust. He has not appeared to be in top shape at the beginning of either of his seasons in the NFL, and now he's taking a break just as he and the offensive line appear to be in perfect sync and were dominating the league. So I don't even know if the Cowboys are going to have a season to play for when he comes back. They're going to have to play a lot better than they did today, and they're going to have to resolve a lot of problems that were exposed today if they're going to be even in the wild card hunt when Zeke Elliott comes back for either the final 4 games or the final 2 games.
Let me ask you this. Can he be... I mean, these players are drug tested at times, correct?
If they're on a drug suspension.
But now the ones that there's no random... I mean, obviously in college football there are a lot of random drug tests. You have to be in the program.
Unless he's in the program and we don't know that.
And the only thing we do know is that he... I mean, now, you can't be put in the program just on circumstantial evidence. Now, you can be suspended for 6 games, but if the testimony is like that you've been doing cocaine or been whatever you do with cocaine, snort cocaine, and all the things that came up in some of that testimony, you can't be thrown into the program on that. But you can be suspended on evidence that the police, or the courts.
I'm going to stand by what I said before, which is we don't know if he's in the program or not.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad you're standing there. But now I'm just wondering, what could he be seeking a country that might have some sort of lax laws or embrace some things?
There are states that have lax laws.
I know. I just don't think it's a little chilly in Colorado right now. I think if you're going to go somewhere, you want to get out of if you're going to get out of the country. But there's a lot of places he could go.
I'd like to disassociate myself at this point from the rest of this conversation.
No, you can't do that. You're on this podcast. You are a big part of Doomsday. It is Ed Werder, Matt Mosley, coming to you live from Frito Nation Productions on the night of a Cowboys 27-7 loss.
But they were up 7-0.
Wait,
there's that.
Oh, that's right. And because Atlanta did. Yeah, Atlanta made it 7-3 at some point, and then it was 10-7 at halftime, and then they could have made it 17-10, but they literally, and of course, good for Mike Nugent because nobody's talking about him. He could have made it 17-10. I mean, such a failure on so many levels, but it's just hard to talk about anything else but what happened with this left tackle today because I don't recall. You covered a lot of teams. You happened to cover some Cowboys teams that had remarkable offensive lines.
I covered one that was 1-15 too.
You did cover, yeah. Some of those same players eventually became, were part of the successful offensive lines. But there were some rough times with those teams. But Ed, as far as an individual performance, and I remember either watching. I should remember if I was there or not because I was covering the Giants and Eagles a lot back then. But I don't think I was there that night. So the Winston Justice thing that happened in 2007. But you don't often end up after a game making it all about an offensive lineman. You know something horrific had to happen to a guy for that to be. And I thought I wrote it down. In fact, I thought Troy Aikman.
I've got his quote right here.
Okay, go ahead.
They had finally made an adjustment and applied a double team to Adrian Claiborne on a pass rush play, and he still got through because Cooper didn't touch him. And you got the quote?
Yeah, I do have the quote, but I don't want to interrupt you. Cooper, and you're saying Cooper and Chaz.
Cooper was supposed to help on the inside,
yeah.
And Chaz knew he had help. He just had to handle the outside, and they still let him get around the outside and sack Dak Prescott. And then Troy Aikman said this remarkable thing.
Yeah, Troy said that's a pretty embarrassing play. That's about as bad as I've seen anyone get beat in a football game in all my years watching football. At that point...
This is a guy who, by the way, got sacked 11 times by the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's seen bad football and poor offensive line play and great pass rushing.
I think you're right. I do think, and I find this humorous, and I kind of like it. I think it happens in a very seldomly, but I do think there's every once in a while, Troy can get just completely frustrated by just the state of the game or the state of what he's watching and how and to hear him say those words in that one moment. He doesn't often sound like this. He kind of sounded like a Cowboys fan. I think it was almost like he channeled what every Cowboys fan was thinking, and it was just he didn't sound like a Cowboys fan. He sounded like someone who loves the organization and loves and has been a huge part of that organization. He sounded disgusted, and I don't blame him. I mean, I think he said those lines with utter disgust.
I think he would have said that about any other team that did what the Cowboys did and let one of their guys get exposed to the detriment of the entire offense.
Probably so. I think I was.
But I actually think, and I think Troy's great at being objective. And I know people in Philadelphia don't think he is, and people who are Giants fans don't necessarily think so. But I think he is. And I don't think it would be easy for him, given how much he thinks of Jason Garrett, to he's using Chaz Green to criticize more people than just Chaz Green, including Jason Garrett.
Probably so. Although you're right, he's close enough with Jason that he didn't want to just come out and just plow him over. I think what happened with the Cowboys today is a fireable offense. Now, what I have a hard time doing is saying, okay, who gets fired? You're not going to fire Garrett. With the team 5-4, you're not going to fire Linehan. You could fire the offensive line coach, although he's not in charge of the schemes. Yeah, you could fire Frank Pollock. So the best I can do, and I hate this because it's so harsh, but you got to give this kid a fresh start somewhere. I would put Chaz Green on the street And I would let somebody else maybe take him and put him back together again.
You're sure you have somebody who will do the job just as well or better next week?
How can you not?
Smith back?
How can you not? No, I'd put Witten or that rookie tight end that I didn't even know was on the team, that number 89 today. What's that guy's name? I was looking him up earlier. At one point today, there was a funny run where they sort of picked Alfred Morris off the ground and were carrying him.
They should put number 79 on Witten. Put 79 on.
That's right.
Make him be the left tackle.
Either Witten or that guy. What was that guy's name? Started with a G. I was like, who is that? And he's one of the backup tight ends because Swaim wasn't active, and he was in there.
He's a good blocking tight end. Swaim.
I liked it. Yeah, Swaim is, but Swaim didn't make the trip along with Tyron Smith. I do think this. If I were Tyron Smith or his attorney, I would be trying to redo my deal. Like, in the second half, I would have called
Smith,
Steven.
I'd be trying to redo my deal right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Tyron Smith.
What did I say?
Chaz Green, I think.
Oh, I think Frito said I did it. You
really?
corrected my joke. That's okay.
I'm here for you.
I think I said Tyron Smith. But anyway, I would have been calling at halftime and just saying, okay, I'm ready. I gave you guys a team-friendly deal. We need to do a new deal going forward. And by the way, I think I'm going to be healthy next week if we get something done.
As unbelievable as this seems, going into this game, they're actually 2-2 in games without Tyron Smith. They won 2 of the 3 games they played last year without him. They won at Chicago, and they beat the 49ers. So,
but who did they? I'm trying to think who they put in there last year when he was out.
They would have had Doug Free on the right side. So, who was their swing tackle last year?
Well, there's one guy that ended up at Jacksonville. It was a decent. The guy Jeremy Parnell. He was a couple of years ago.
That would have been him.
Yeah. Well, we could. I'd like to just kind of sit here and think about it for a little bit longer. But I do think maybe Collins slipped out there. Collins was hurt most of last year. I'll just say this: it couldn't have been Chaz Green. There's no way it was Chaz Green if they went 2-2 without Tyron Smith. That was a. But again, Ed, you made a good point earlier. As much as we can sit here and talk, and I do think he should be off the team. And you just got to let somebody else hopefully give him another chance somewhere else. But you can never the minute you put him out there again at left tackle, whoever makes that decision, and that would be Jason Garrett, or in this case Jerry, since he makes all decisions. But no, you'd fire that person. Chaz Green can never start for the Dallas Cowboys again. And so me saying that says he needs to be on the street. And I would say, Ed, Byron Bell. I'm not saying he went in there and was just great or anything, but I would at least give him a shot at this thing next week.
Well, and then gave him a shot. And then he gave up 2 sacks too.
No, Ed, that last one, as Troy said, that was Dak's problem. There was a nice pocket.
He didn't step up. And
Dak didn't step up, and Byron actually pushed the guy out for once. Did you see that, by the way? That was funny. They were joking about it. Our man Adrian Claiborne, he just looked bored. They were joking. Did you see it? At the end of the game, he was just sitting over there like, I can't believe this is this easy. And he came into this game 22.5 sacks, Ed, and he ends up with 6 sacks in this ball game. Can you imagine that? He came into the league in 2011. He's 29 years old, and he had basically a third of all his career sacks in this one game. An embarrassment for the Cowboys. Now, Ed, I'll tell you what's not an embarrassment, and that is Harry's razors. Ed, if you look over at me right now, take a good close look at me. No nicks. I've got no, and that's the thing. For years, I'd have to use one of those styptic pencils.
I wouldn't say you're flawless by any means.
Certainly not flawless in any way, but from a shaving standpoint, doing some good things, and thank you to Harry's Razors for that. Harry's is so confident you're going to love their blades. They'll give you their trial shave set for free when you sign up at harrys.com/Doomsday. And Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price, which is why over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's. And Ed, for those of you looking to get your holiday shopping done early, Harry's just released their special edition holiday sets that make great gifts. Said to you earlier, you and Frito are going to get one of those. I'm going to make sure of it. And Ed, that's something, you've got a brother, you've got a son, you have people in your life that shave. And I think that's why you need to think about Harry's. Harrys.com/Doomsday. Again, it's Harrys.com/Doomsday. Ed, here is the Doomsday scenario for the Cowboys. Have you looked to see who's next on the schedule and who comes in here rested as ever.
The Philadelphia Fighting Eagles, the team that sacked Troy Aikman 11 times. Maybe they'll make it an even dozen against Dak Prescott next week on Sunday Night Football. And I have, there's going to be a lot of attention paid, despite what just happened in this game. There's going to be a lot of attention on the two quarterbacks, both drafted last year. Carson Wentz, obviously number 2 overall after 2 trades by the Eagles to go up and get him, and the Cowboys getting Dak Prescott in the 4th round like they did. Obviously, Dak has a better record right now, but I polled 7 general managers and asked them which quarterback they would take if they had their pick. And 6 of them said they would take Carson Wentz. And the 7th one said he was going to take Dak Prescott just so it wasn't unanimous. Honestly, that's what he said. And people like general managers and coaches. They like what they've seen of Prescott. They like what a good runner he is, how sturdy he is. He throws the football pretty well. But they just believe that Wentz is a much better natural pocket passer. He has mobility, but he's a better, more advanced pocket passer than Dak Prescott is at this point in his career. But I think those two players, when Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Eagles, was on with us in the offseason, we talked about this being a great competition between these two quarterbacks for the next 10 years in this division, potentially. And this is the game that really is probably going to decide whether the Cowboys have any chance whatsoever to win the division. They're already 3 games out. They get 4 behind.
Oh, yeah, I've already handed that. I think that's out in my mind, the division. But in order to kind of stay in the playoff hunt, did you see that little graphic they threw up there today? I mean, the Cowboys are already, as of now, with this loss, they were already kind of that in the hunt team. If they had won, they would have been like right up there for that 6th spot. And
they've lost
right
to a bunch of NFC teams, right? They've lost to the Rams,
Correct.
They've lost to the Packers, they've lost to the Falcons, and they've lost to – who else did they lose to?
Did you know the Rams are 7-2?
How about that? And the highest scoring team in football. After being the lowest scoring team in football, they are averaging the same number of points as the greatest show on turf.
Yeah,
Kurt Warner.
Here's what I'm trying to currently decide, and I think this is the real deal because we know Wade Phillips does a great job as defense coordinator, and Sean McVay has done an extremely nice job as the head coach. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to keep my eye on this one because I do remember us all going crazy over that start one year that Josh McDaniels had when he went, was he Denver? When he became head coach and he started off like 6-1 or something, or 6-0.
And he beat Dallas and New England back to back.
And we literally thought he was
the boy. A year later, he was fired.
He was the boy wonder, and he ends up getting fired. Just so you know,
by the way, a boy wonder, by the way.
Dak Prescott, his quote after the game: "We got our asses kicked," and I quote: "That's what happened in Denver. We got better from it. We'll get better from this one as well." And he did say he exchanged text messages with Zeke. And so
as friends,
just as friends. I don't know what that means. And then on the offensive line, Dak was quoted saying after the game, "I'm not going to lose confidence in any of them. I'm going to go back and look at the film and see what we could have done better as a unit." Dak, your coaches owe you an apology. And as sad as I am to say this, because I don't like beating people up when they're down, I really don't. But I think everybody on that plane ride tonight should say goodbye to Chaz Green. Chaz Green should not be a part of this organization moving forward. And that sounds harsh, but I think that's better for everybody involved. Maybe they'll do what they did with Lucky and like pin a false allegation on him.
You don't think incompetence is enough to send him on his way?
They generally, before they cut a guy, they have to put a false.
Maybe Jerry could say, "I know you're the one who leaked that thing to Florio about taking my franchise away. You're out of here."
Chaz, I don't mind that you gave up 5 sacks, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you put it out there. But boy, the beat goes on. And win or lose, the Cowboys will always be interesting, and the Doomsday podcast will be here. Ed, people continue to come to us. Let's give them all the ways. Stitcher, you can sign up, of course, on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Google Play, so many different ways. iHeartRadio. Spotify checking us out. I don't understand.
Ooh,
I mean, yeah.
I would have dressed better had I known.
Spotify starting to, well, you don't need to. Spotify's not going to film us, Ed.
You said they were checking us out.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. Spotify's kind of like, let's sample you guys, and they're liking what they're hearing, and boy, people continuing to want to partner with us. We appreciate it, and we love you for it, and we love Frito Nation Productions. Ed, for everyone who's been a part of this one, I want to say good night from far north Dallas. Ed, say good night.
Good night, far north Dallas.
Lights are shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles.